I'm Piyush and I'm going to be your main host in this webinar today. And as we said, we are going to talk about what is the right step-by-step approach to get to a 720 plus kind of a score on GMAT. And trust me, when I see from my past experience of helping students prepare for GMAT for almost 8 years now, I see that the biggest reason why people don't succeed is because they don't plan their prep in the right order. They don't go about their prep in the right way, and that's one of the biggest reasons why people fail to get to their target scores. In this webinar, I'm going to help you understand how you should go about preparing your entire GMAT journey. Like how should you go about thinking about the study plan, what are the various steps that you should follow, and everything which is required to take you to that target score. Okay, so before I go ahead, I would like to know from you, since how long have you been preparing for GMAT? So it will be great if you can actually tell me in this poll over here. So I'll give you a minute to respond to this poll. So please tell me how are how are you going to since how long have you been preparing for GMAT? Ashima has a question. Will be telling for beginners also who have not taken any mock test? Yes, Ashima. In fact, this step-by-step guide is meant mostly for beginners, people who are just starting their prep. That's a big that's the main chunk that I want to cater to, and that's why this poll is there. So please respond in this poll. Let me know since how long have you been preparing for GMAT. Okay, I see a good number of responses. Wait, I'll wait for a few more to come. Okay, it is giving me a pretty good idea about the entire batch which is there. Like, and I'm happy to see the results till now. Okay, cool. So I see kind of results have stabilized. Twinkle is asking, can we get the recording of the webinar? Yes, Twinkle, you'll get the recording of the webinar if you've registered for it. Don't worry about that. But I would recommend to attend in live mode as much as possible. That way you can get maximum benefit out of it. All right, so let me end the poll now. So I can see that almost around 60% of you, more than 60% in fact, are yet to start, or they have been preparing for less than 1 month. So you are in the right place, guys. You're gonna learn a lot about what are you doing correct about your prep and what are you not doing right about your prep. So you're gonna actually learn a lot from this webinar, and please be with me, please like be with me till the entire webinar, because you'll be able to get a lot of learnings from it today. Now, regarding those of you who are preparing for 2 to 3 months now, around 15% of you are doing that. So again, there are going to be a lot more learnings for you guys as well around how should you tweak your preparation in terms of being ready for the round one. Okay, so for those of you who are taking more than 4 months, also you are going to learn something from the webinar. Okay, so Himanshu, we are just starting the webinar. It's just getting a feel of the entire batch that is there. Okay, so just starting it now. So as some of you might be knowing, again, that this webinar is the first webinar in the countdown to round one. So this is a new initiative taken by GMAT where we are basically going to take up 20 important topics, 20 very, very important aspects on GMAT, and help you through the next 10 weeks by taking one topic at a time to help you get to that 700 plus kind of a score. So this webinar series starts today. In case you haven't registered for the entire series yet, all you need to do is fill a simple Google form, and I'm just gonna drop the link in the chat here. In case you haven't done that, you should do it right away. Okay, in that case, you'll be receiving messages about the same on your WhatsApp, on your email IDs, and all the places. So in this webinar series, we are going to take up all the key important aspects of GMAT. And just to give you an idea, this is the webinar. Today's webinar is the first webinar where we are going to start this off. And tomorrow we are having the so this is a strategy webinar. Okay, we are going to discuss about the GMAT testing, GMAT preparation strategy in this webinar. Tomorrow onwards, we are going to focus on alternatively on quant, verbal, and so on every week. Okay, so tomorrow we are having one of the most important topics for quant, which is factors and multiples. Okay, because if you look at factors and multiples, they're key to mastering GMAT number property questions. So if it is about whether it is about the questions around LCM, GCD, primes, whatever. If divisibility, remainders, you need to be very thorough with factors and multiples. So tomorrow at the same time, we are going to have a webinar on that. So if you haven't registered for it, please fill this form. You will receive the email invites and everything. And that way you can basically join the webinar tomorrow. Okay. And then next week we'll have a webinar on verb tenses. Again, verb tenses is one of the most common problem that I see with people. Like they are not able to understand, wrap their head around when to use a perfect tense, when to use a simple tense, and all those things. Okay, Shashank, the duration of this webinar is going to be mostly 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So we'll try to keep it around 1.5 hours to 2 hours basically for every single webinar in the series. And then we will move to the fourth topic of the webinar, where we're going to take up the art of picking numbers. How should you pick numbers? When should you pick numbers? And so on. So if you see, again, I'm not going to detail into everything, but we are going to cover SC, CR, RC, quant, geometry, problems, number properties, everything, every important aspect of GMAT that is required in this webinar series. Okay, it's gonna run for the next 10 weeks. It's gonna help you be prepared for the round one. So do ensure that you register for it and make sure you enter your country code properly in the form, okay, to receive WhatsApp invites for the webinars. All right, so great then. So this is the webinar series that we are kickstarting today. Countdown to round one, 10 weeks to go, so be ready. And as I said, we're going to talk about the preparation strategy for GMAT. Okay, so in this webinar, we're going to talk about that, and this webinar is divided into 3 simple parts. Okay, so first part is who are we? Okay, we are going to talk about that for around 5 minutes, and then we'll go to the main part of the webinar, where we're going to spend around 75 minutes. We'll tell you how to strategize for your prep and how to go about doing it in its entirety. And approximately in the end, we'll actually open it for an open-ended Q&A for around 10 minutes. So all in all, from right now till around 90 odd minutes, 1.5 hours, you'll be with me discussing about your preparation strategy. Okay. John has a question, sir. What about application filling? So right now we don't have anything on this in this webinar series on application filling, but we will try to include some more topics on it. Okay, that's a nice suggestion, John. We'll take it up. We have primarily focused in this webinar as on the GMAT side of things, not so much so on the application side of things. Okay, so Surya, I think that answers your question as well. So let's get started with the first part. So who are we? Okay. So we are experts with approximately 30 years of combined experience in the test prep industry, where we have worked with some of the biggest brands across the globe. While we were working with these companies, we had a first-hand experience of interacting with many students. And what we found out was that students who are preparing for GMAT actually face a lot of challenges when they are preparing. Okay. And before I talk about the challenges that we face, that we found out, I would like to hear from you. You also are preparing for GMAT, right? Right now, most of you are actually in the very, very initial phases. Some of you are in the very later phases of your prep. So tell me, what are the biggest problems that you as a student are facing today when you're preparing for GMAT? And please be honest, please be open with me. No answer is stupid, okay? Make sure that you feel like you tell me what is the biggest problem that you face. And in case I've missed something, I'll take care of that in the webinar. I'll talk about that too. So what is the biggest problem that you face? Okay, Surya has gone to the point directly. Surya says, I can't improve on my score. Okay, what is the reason why you can't improve on your score? Okay, Rajendra says verbal ability is not up to the mark. And that's something which I hear continuously. Okay, so basically a lot of people don't really know where they're struggling. That's one of the biggest problems that I also saw. Shushti says what to study, where to start, where I stand. I don't know. Like that's very difficult. Shashank says guidance and structure or a schedule to follow is tough. Vikas says right resources to follow. Ram Kumar says, okay, schedule, timetable, and recollecting the mistakes what we did while practicing, that's difficult. So planning to study. Abhinav also faces problem in verbal section. Twinkle says analytical skills is weak. Okay. So a lot of responses, guys. I'm really, really happy to see that most of you are also talking about some of the biggest problems that we also found. Abhay has an interesting point. He says finding quality questions even in fairly good rated books is a tough thing. Yes, Abhay, it is difficult. A lot of people don't really understand where they can actually source the right questions from, because a lot of questions are not GMAT style. They're not really relevant on GMAT, even on the best books that you can see probably. Neelam says what to study, where to start. Okay, so I think you are in the right place, Neelam. Don't worry about that. So I'll just quickly talk about the problems that we faced. Sam has also an interesting point. Sometimes we lose motivation. Yes, that's definitely there. So what we saw was as a pain point, the main pain point that students have is they have to plan their studies themselves. Okay, and when I say they have to plan their studies themselves, basically planning includes everything that you can think about. Okay, it includes what to study, when to study, in which order to study, and everything around that. Okay, so that's what is the biggest problem, and the reason that most of the people who prepare for GMAT are working professionals actually makes this problem even more significant, because as a working professional you hardly have any time to prepare, let aside time for planning. So a lot of people just start randomly. They just take up some books or go to GMAT club and just start randomly. They just go through things randomly. That's one of the biggest problems that people face. The second biggest problem that people face, and some of you are talking about that as well, is how to analyze your strengths and weaknesses. Okay, a lot of you are telling that, okay, I'm struggling with verbal, I'm struggling to improve my score, but why are you weak in that particular area? Why are you struggling? Is that some most of the people don't really know. Okay, and the third problem is there is no individual attention given to students. Even if you go to the topmost institutes, face-to-face classes, there's hardly any individual attention given to students. So these are the three key problems that we found, and we saw that there are there's some companies that are trying to solve this problem, but still the problem, a lot of you might see some 1 month 3 month plans roaming around here and there. You'll come across those plans. The problem with these plans is these plans are not really adaptive. They are templates, they are standardized, but then they don't adapt as you proceed. So if you are not doing well or you are going slow, these plans are not going to change. And since this plan do not adapt as you learn, you are not able to stick to those plans and get to the final result that you want to. The second problem is most of the companies do share statistics, but the statistics that they share are not really actionable, because they don't give you insights. They don't tell you, okay, you are weak in SC, but why are you weak in SC? What is that you're struggling with? And to get personal attention, the only way is to get private tutoring, which all of us know is not affordable for everyone. Now, when we saw these problems firsthand interacting with students, we felt like, okay, these are problems that needs to be solved for sure. Now, how can we solve this problem? One of the easiest way to solve this problem was technology. The core problem over here is guidance, personalization, and we believe that we can create the world's only truly personalized course through GMAT-Viz. And that's when the idea of GMAT-Viz came about. And we created a course which actually comes with a personalized study plan. So you just don't need to worry about planning at all. In fact, if you don't even attend this webinar and just go to GMAT-Viz, everything will be taken care of by the platform's AI itself. It will tell you what to do, when to do, all by itself, and it is an adaptive plan. Not just that, the course itself is dynamic. It serves you real-time improvement modules on the fly. So it's not a static course. You actually get real-time improvement modules based on your strengths and weaknesses as you proceed, as you learn on the platform. And then we top it up with dedicated mentorship. So anyone who takes the entire GMAT course, like the quant and verbal course from us, also gets help from dedicated mentors who monitor their progress every 10 to 15 days. So the moment you register, you get a link to connect with your mentor. All you need to do is schedule a discussion with them every 10 to 15 days, and they will assess your performance and tell you what is the reason why you're struggling and what is that you need to do. That's something which is a very, very unique feature that we offer. We call it guided learning. And trust me, guys, the mentors that we provide are having at least 8+ years of experience. They're not call center executives who are reading from a templatized module. They are people who have taken the GMAT themselves, scored 700 and know the drill. Okay, so that's one of the biggest reasons why we have been GMAT Cubs most effective course when it comes to average score improvement. So as of now, our average score improvement is actually higher than 117 points, but this is a dated data point. But still, our average score improvement is much more than all the other players which are there in the industry. So this was about us. Now I'm going to move to the main part of the webinar where I'm going to talk about the strategy to score 720 plus on GMAT. Okay, this is going to be where we are going to spend now 75 minutes on this part. So tell me guys, are you excited for this? Quick yes, no? Are you with me? Are you excited for learning how to score a 720 plus on GMAT? Quick yes, no guys? I hope everyone is going to say yes. This is a rhetorical question in a way, I would say, but good to see that you guys are with me. You're excited to know how to score a 720 plus. Great, great guys. So I'm gonna break this down to a very simple 4 steps, and this is the same 4 steps that we talk about with all our students. And I'm gonna get into the details of these 4 steps, so don't you worry about that. Okay, I'm gonna talk about all these 4 steps at length, and the first and second steps are the most important. People actually falter in these 2 steps, where I'm gonna spend approximately 20 minutes each on the first 2 steps it alone. And trust me, these steps are not like they are sequential in nature. A lot of it is like happening simultaneously also. So the first step that you need to focus on, and the most important part, is you need to plan your goal properly. You need to plan your prep in the right way. You need to break down your target score into the right quant and verbal targets. You need to understand how much effort is required. You need to understand what is the right order in which you should learn, and you need to understand how you should go about working on each of those areas. That's something which is very, very critical, and that's step 1 for us. Once the planning is done, then comes the role of execution. Now, when executing, it's very critical that you don't just focus on concepts and practice. In fact, practice is something which comes later, becomes more important later, is how I'll put it. In the execution phase, what is more important is you learn the concepts and you learn the application of those concepts. And then you move to the assessing phase, where you try and assess whatever you have learned, how well you have learned it. At that particular phase, basically, I kind of subdivide this phase into 2 parts. So assessment has to happen with learning and fine-tuning. Okay, and don't worry about these terminologies. I'm going to break them down into smaller parts. I'm going to help you clearly understand what is supposed to be done in each of these areas. And then once you have assessed yourself, you need to optimize your weak areas. Okay, that's what basically you're supposed to do. All right, so let's get started with the planning part. So the first thing that we need to understand is how to identify your target score. What is the right target score that you should have in mind? Now, when I say target score, I don't mean the overall target. I'm sure most of you would already identify that, okay, I need to score a 720, or I need to score a 740, or I need to score a 770 on GMAT. Some of you might be targeting a 680 also. Doesn't matter. I feel that you most would have identified the right target score for you by now. So someone is saying that Srushti is saying my voice is not audible sometimes. So let me ask you in this poll very quickly, guys. Can you hear me clearly? Is it okay? Is my voice very clear to all of you, or is it hazy or breaking in between? If it is clear, please select a yes. If it is not, please select a no. Okay. Because I'm working with a 100 Mbps connection. My connection seems to be pretty stable right now. So I see almost everyone can hear me loud and clear. So Srushti, I believe the problem is at your end. So please try rejoining or maybe checking your internet connection. Okay. So as I was talking about the target score, most of you would have identified your target score. Again, the overall target is dependent on a lot of factors. I see a question in the poll. Surya is saying MIM program's target score. So overall, see, target score for a particular program is dependent on a lot of factors. It depends on the ranking of the profile, the program. It depends on your profile overall. It depends on your extracurriculars, your academics, a lot of other factors. Are you from an overrepresented pool, and a lot of other things. So that's a different discussion altogether. We do have a blog page for that. I will try to dig out the link and send it over in the chat. So please, Surya, remind me at the end of the webinar. I'll talk about that. Okay. So once you have identified the overall target score, you need to break it down into the sectional target scores, as in verbal and quant scores. Now, there are 2 scenarios which are possible. most of us are generally good in one area. Okay, if let's say you're good in quant or you're good in verbal. Now, in that case, what you should try and do is you should try to maximize your score in your good area. Okay, that's the best possible thing that you can do. Try to get the maximum juice out of your strong area. But if you're good in both the sections, you should try to balance the target. Okay, don't try to actually get a very high score in one and a low score in the other one. That's not the right strategy to follow. So let me take a very simple example. Let me take a target score of 720, which is a pretty decent target score. So if you're targeting a 720, what should your sectional targets look like if you are in one of these two cases? Okay, so let's look at the first case, and let's assume that you are strong in quant. Okay, so if you're strong in quant and you're targeting a 720, you should break down your target score to a Q50 and a verbal 38. Okay, that should comfortably take you to a 720 on GMAT. But if you're good in verbal, on the other hand, you should rather target a quant 46 and verbal 43, because you have a much higher chance of getting to a verbal 43 rather than getting to a quant 50. So that's the right target score for you. That's the best strategy for you. However, if you're equally good in both areas, you don't have a strength as such, then you're better off by targeting something around a Q48 and a verbal 40, which are really comparable scores when it comes to skill level. Okay, although the percentiles don't look comparable for 48 and 40, but they are comparable scores when it comes to the skill level overall. So 48 and 40 is what you should be targeting. That is how you should break down your target score. Now, once you have identified the target, you should start working on one area at a time. Okay, do not just work on both quant and verbal simultaneously. This is a thumb rule which I tell my students, and specifically for those who are working professionals and can only put in up to 25 hours in a week. If you're just putting 25 hours in a week, you are better off doing quant followed by verbal or verbal followed by quant. Don't work on both of them parallelly. Obviously, when I say this, I also recommend that when you have moved to verbal, for example, in this case, you will be putting in some time to revise quant. Okay, so I'll talk about this in more depth, but remember, you should follow one section at a time. Don't divide your time if you're not putting in more than 25 hours in a week. If you are putting in more than 25 hours, let's say 30 to 40 hours in a week, you can divide the time between quant and verbal. You can do them parallelly. That's not a problem. All right, but if you, most of the people will fall under this bracket, I know, so for them this only makes sense. Now, whether you should start with quant or should you start with verbal is something which is dependent on you. I generally recommend people to start with the stronger area and then move to the weaker area, and this is more important for people who are just starting. Okay, why is this important? Because working professionals generally have a lot of inertia around this. Okay, a lot of inertia that they have to overcome. So if you have a lot of inertia to overcome, then it is better that you start with your stronger section, because if you start with your stronger section, it's much easier for you to actually break that inertia and get into the momentum. However, if you are into the prep for quite some time, and in that case, you're better off by starting on from a weak area. Okay, so that's something which I recommend. That's the strategy that you should follow. Now, once you have identified that, you should try to break down your phase of learning in 3 phases. And I'll quickly take a question from the chat here. Abhinav is asking, I'm getting 680 to 700 in the mock scores right now. And then you're asking, please answer my query. So Abhinav, I'm not sure what your query is. I only know your mock scores right now. So if your query was related to this slide where you are trying to ask your target score, then you have to basically tell me what's your current target score and like what's your current scores in quant and verbal. Then I can tell you exactly how you should break it down. Okay, so let me talk about the 3 phases of learning. So ideally, you should divide your prep into 3 steps. The first phase of learning is learning phase. Again, it's learning phase. It coincides. So in learning phase, what you do is you focus on covering all the basic areas of the topic conceptually, and then you also learn the right strategy to solve questions, right strategy or right method to solve questions. And trust me, guys, this is the second part is the more important part, because that's what people actually don't focus on. And then when they come to the second phase, they kind of face it challenging. Okay, so I'll talk more about the strategy and the method part in a bit. But in this case, you should be in this phase, in the first phase, you should be focusing on covering everything in the right order, getting through all the syllabus for quant and verbal properly, having a solid foundation. Okay, that's something which is very, very critical. And once you're done with this phase, then you move to the fine tuning phase. In the fine tuning phase, you take up one or two topics individually, one like you take up individual modules one at a time, identify what your strengths and weaknesses are, classify them into two areas, and start working on your weak areas with more focus. Okay, give more focus to this, identify why you're weak in these areas, and for your strong areas, you should maintain your practice. Basically, you just stay, you need to stay in touch. That's basically what you need to do. This is the fine tuning phase, and this is the second most important stage after the learning phase in your prep. And once you're out of this phase, the last phase is your mock phase. Okay, and this is something which is very, very important. I kind of get this question a lot of times from students: when should we take mocks? How many mocks should we take? Okay, and I would like to know from you guys rather, how many mocks are ideal for your GMAT prep. And let me actually create a poll here very quickly. Just give me a minute, guys. Just give me a minute, guys. I don't want you to type in the chat, so making life easy for you. And let me, almost done. So here you go. How many mocks should one take before taking the GMAT? Surya has asked the relevant question. Should I take one mock per week? I'm going to answer that, Surya. Please respond to this poll. In the meantime, I'll take up Abhinav's question. How to boost my score in verbal? Getting quant 47, 48 consistently. Verbal is quite varied. Getting in range 35 to 38. So again, Abhinav, you have been preparing for quite some time, is what I can assume. Now, to improve your score in verbal, I believe that your current verbal score indicates you are having application issues. Okay, you're not following the right methodologies to solve questions. And to understand in which areas you're not following the right methodologies, I would need to understand how you're solving individual question types. So, Abhinav, I'm going to share a link with you. You can actually schedule a discussion one-on-one with me using this link, and I'll be more than happy to understand your problems, pain points, and tell you exactly how you should go about doing it. So I just sent you a link. You can use this link to schedule a one-on-one discussion with me. Okay, and guys, please hold on to your questions around these things, because I'm going to talk about the strategy first, and then we can take up these questions in the third part of the webinar. Okay, so Surya, I'm going to take your question also in the third part of the webinar. Don't worry about that. All right, so thank you so much for the polls, and I'm ending the poll now, and I can see that most of you have mentioned that you should be taking 6 to 10 marks during your prep, and a lot of you are in fact in favor of 11 to 15 marks. Some of you are saying more than 20 marks. Some of you are saying 16 to 20 marks should also be taken, and very few of you say that 3 to 5 marks is all you need. So let me tell you my take on this. I believe that when it comes to mock tests, if you do your prep properly, if you plan your prep properly, you need only 3 to 5 mock tests. Okay, now this should, I'm sure most of you are going to disagree with me here. Okay, this is a little bit controversial to some of you, not some, in fact 89% people believe that you should be taking more than 3 to 5 marks. But trust me, guys, this is the biggest mistake that people do. When they start off, initially itself, after a couple of weeks of preparation, they start taking mocks. And that's the biggest mistake that one can do. Think about it. You don't even know what are the kind of questions that can come on CR or RC. You haven't even prepared for them. And if you just go into the mock test, what will happen? You'll only get a poor score. Abhinav is mentioning only 3 to 5. Yes, Abhinav, that's what you need. Because see, I'm not saying that you are going into mock test phase right now. You are doing it after all this. And your improvement happens in these two stages. Okay, it does not happen in mock stage. Okay, because what people do is generally they believe that just by taking mocks they will improve their performance. That doesn't happen. By taking a mock, you only know where you're right, where you're wrong. And if you have to know that, you're better off by taking sectional test. Take up tests on SC, CR, and RC individually, or number properties and algebra individually. You will get more questions from those areas. Identify what your problems are and work on those problems. And I'm going to talk about that in depth. So I'm not going to get into it as of now directly, but remember, mocks are just required to ensure that you have the right test taking strategy in mind. You know how the adaptive algorithm works. You are able to strategize properly. If you ensure that you are preparing properly, you don't need more than 3 to 5 mocks. If your preparation is not proper, then you will definitely need more than that. So if your preparation is just a little bit off, you might as well need 6 to 10 mocks. But if it is way off the right strategy, you will be taking up 11 plus mocks, and even if you do that, you won't end up with your target score, because that's not the right way to go about doing it. Okay, so mock phase is the last phase of your prep. It should not happen every week or every 10 days. It should only happen when you are done with the first 2 phases. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the first 2 phases, the planning of the first 2 phases now. So in the first phase, in the learning phase, the most important thing is, how should you sequence your studies? How should you go about sequencing your studies? Okay, and I'm going to take a question from Ashima, which was a relevant question. If you're students, then in which area should we focus more, or weaker or stronger area? So Ashima, if you are studying full time for GMAT, that's what I understand from being a student. If you're more than 25-30 hours, you can actually study both the things at the same time. You can work on verbal and quant parallelly. That's not a problem. If you're a working professional, then you should do one at a time. Okay, now what about sequence of studying? So I'm going to talk about verbal first, then I'm going to talk about quant. So I'm going to talk about individual sections. What should be the sequence within verbal and what should be the sequence within quant? Okay, so this is very critical because a lot of people don't know how to prepare, like even verbal or quant. They kind of start on the wrong foot, and that's where they struggle. A lot of people do prepare like this, that okay, when they start, they kind of believe that they should do SC, CR, and RC on alternate days. Some people, like let's say, start with RC. In fact, some people start with CR, some people start with SC. But what is the right order? How should you go about doing this? Okay, so Neelam has another question. Varun, I'm in the initial phase of GMAT prep. So Neelam, this is Piyush, by the way. So I think you missed the name. But anyway, you're saying, how do I figure out my strengths and weaknesses? So one way to do that is you can take a diagnostic test just to see which area you're more comfortable with. That's something we can do. And if you don't want to do that, you can rather start with any one of them. That's not a problem. Okay, so what about the right sequence? So I'm going to talk about verbal. So first we need to understand what are the things that are tested on GMAT verbal. What are the skills that are tested? Okay, the first skill which is tested on GMAT verbal is your comprehension skills. That's the most critical one, and that's the most basic one as well. Okay, what basically is tested here is, are you able to in fact, rather than me answering this, I would like to hear from you. What do you think is meant by comprehension skills? Tell me in the chat here. And let me open the chat for everyone, public messages as well, so that other people can also see it. Okay. Shubhra, you will be able to see the messages now. I stopped it in between. Okay, so tell me, what do you think is meant by comprehension skills? What in your opinion is comprehension skills? Okay, Atul has an interesting answer. He says, understanding the passage. Rajendra also says that Emmanuel says this understanding. Okay, good. Atul says meaning of the sentences. Right, Atul, now you are thinking in the right direction. It's not that you're thinking in the wrong direction earlier, but it's better now. Okay, comprehending the para is what Vikas says, core idea. Ashima says, how are we comprehending the para? See, when most of you see comprehension, you kind of really associate it with RC, because it ends with comprehension, right? RC is reading comprehension. But RC is two parts. It's reading and comprehension. There are two things which are there. Comprehension is not just about RC. Comprehension is about understanding and interpreting what's given. Okay, you have to understand and interpret what's given, and most of you know that, right? So why did I ask this question? The reason was very simple. Most of us believe that comprehension is all about understanding what is written, but what we don't understand is the understanding the exact same meaning which the author wants to communicate. That's the most important part, and Ram Kumar has actually nailed it really well. He has written reviving finest information with meaning. Exactly, that's what comprehension is about. You need to understand exactly what the author is communicating. And trust me guys, GMAT sentences, and I'm not just talking about SC, CR or RC, it's applicable for all three areas. GMAT sentences sometimes are very convoluted. They make it very complex unnecessarily. They'll start with a long modifier, have a verb somewhere, have a subject somewhere else. They'll unnecessarily make it wordy, okay? They'll add a lot of information, boost it up a lot. And in that case, it becomes difficult for you to get the exact meaning. You may get a meaning, you may get a 80% meaning or 90% meaning, but are you getting the exact meaning out of it is what comprehension skill means. The second skill which is tested on GMAT is analytical reasoning. You need to understand, you need to reason properly about how is the information, how are the various pieces of information related to each other. When the information is flowing from one part of the argument to another, how is it flowing? Whether they are linked properly, are there any assumptions which are there? Are there any gaps in the information which is provided? You need to reason properly with that. And the third skill which is tested is focusing on the main point. Okay, it's very, very important that you understand the main idea of the entire thing. Okay, that's something which is very important. And Abhinav, you're right, RC is mostly about logical interpretation of the passage. Yes, that's mostly about RC. Okay, so if you look at these three skills, and the reason I talked about these three skills is we need to map these skills to each of the various modules in verbal. So SC just tests you on the first skill, which is the comprehension skill. CR, on the other hand, tests you on two skills. Okay, let me go to SC first in more depth. And a lot of people believe that SC is all about grammar, but that's not the case with GMAT SC. GMAT SC is all logical. 70% of questions on GMAT SC are going to be just on modifiers, parallelism, and comparison. These three topics, which are all meaning driven. In fact, I did an analysis myself, and I figured out that 93% of SC questions can be solved from the meaning focus on meaning. Okay, that's the number which I'm talking about. All right. So in SC, you just need the comprehension skills along with your grammar. That's for sure. Okay, but if you want to boost your CR performance, you not only need to understand the individual sentences, you also need to identify the logical gaps between the flow of information. You need to understand how the information is flowing, what are the assumptions that the author is making, and all of it. Okay, that's something which is very, very important for the CR part. In RC, you need to do all three of them. You need to work on the main point also. You need to understand individual sentences, then you need to relate information, and then you need to focus on the main point. So now we're given this information. Tell me, what should be the right sequence of studying for verbal in terms of SC, CR, and RC? What should be the right sequence? Can anyone tell me in the chat here? And let me enable this messages also. Can you tell me in the chat? So Ritvij, you have a pretty like your query seems to be a lot more personalized. So Ritvij, I will hold on to your question. You can ask me in the last part of the webinar because this is more of a personal question. I'll take that up later on. So please tell me, what is the right order in which you should study for verbal? Okay. Okay. Interesting. So Ramkumar says SCCRRC, Ritvich says the same, Sam says the same, Atul says the same, Vikas also says the same. Interesting point of view. Ashima says RC should be done first, CR then, and SC later. Abhinav also says the same, and I think Shubhra also says the same. Okay, so think of it this way, guys. If you start with SC first, okay, what you are doing is if you start with SC first, you just have to work on one skill at a time. And obviously, it is much better to start with SC because in that case, you will just be focusing on one skill. So it's much more easier for you. Remember, when we go from like the first step to second step to third step, right? You don't just jump to the third step directly because it's gonna be much more difficult for you. So if you have to learn the skills, it is much better to start with sentence correction because you'll be just focusing on one skill. then you should move to CR, and then only you should move to RC. Because when you move from SC to CR, in that case, your comprehension skills will help you, and you will be just focusing on the next skill, which is analytical reasoning. Okay, and once you master that skill also, and then you move to RC, what is happening is you are going to take these two skills forward over here, and when you're moving to RC, you just need to focus on the main point, the third skill. So it's a much more logical sequence to follow. But if you go the other way around, if you just go in the reverse order, you will need to work on all three skills in RC itself. And it becomes very difficult to analyze which of the three skills are you weak at. And God forbid, if you don't do well, you will be in a mess. So it's much more logical to start with sentence correction, then move to critical reasoning, and then move to CRC. And I'm talking about people who have just started their prep or are in the initial phases of their prep. So tell me, is this sequence clear to all of you? This is very, very important. Is this clear to all of you? Quickly. Is the sequence clear to all of you? Okay. Great, guys. I'm happy to see the responses on the poll. All of you are clear with this. That's great. So please keep this in mind when you are preparing for verbal. Follow the sequence and not anything else. Only when you feel comfortable with SC, you should move to CR, and only when you feel comfortable with CR, you should move to RC. Now, for quant, like what should you do for quant? Verbal we talked about, but what about quant? Now, in quant also, a lot of people, what they do is they kind of start with number properties, then move to algebra, then move to word problems, and then do geometry. They follow a very similar approach that they do for verbal. Like they think about that they can actually go module wise and take one module at a time, be better at it, and then they can move to the next module. However, that is some work for quant. In quant, it is much more important to look at the interrelation between the topics. For example, you cannot prime factorize and deal with powers if you do not know anything about exponents. See, exponents is a topic from algebra. Okay, prime factorization is a topic from number properties. If you are prime factorizing, which is a number properties topic, and you're doing it without a good understanding of exponents, you will struggle for sure. Similarly, you cannot solve divisibility equations if you're not aware of linear equations and simultaneous equations. Okay, you cannot solve quadratic equations without that you come across in statistics. So all the topics in quant are generally interrelated. Okay, so it doesn't make sense to ace number properties without having the basic understanding of the other essential topics. And I'm happy to know that Ashima, you agree with it, and that's something which I see with students. And this is very critical for those who are struggling in quant or who are just average in quant. Trust me, you need to make sure that your quant approach is changed. Okay, what you need to do in quant is you need to have a three-step approach in quant also. You need to first cover all the basic topics. When I say basic, I mean basic topics from all the modules. So think of it like level 1, level 2, level 3, just like verbal. So you're understanding all the basic topics first. Basic topics include number classification, linear equations, how should you form equations if a statement is given to you, how unitary method, even, odd, and so on. Once you're done with the basic topics, then you should go to the intermediate topics like unit digit, linear inequality, circles, simple interest, compound interest, and so on. Once you're done with the intermediate topics, then only you should go to the advanced topics. Okay, you should follow this order only in that case. And I would like to know from you guys, how many of you were following the same approach before this webinar? Quick yes, no. And please be honest with me. Okay, were you approaching it this way itself, that you are doing all the basic topics from all modules, number properties, algebra, geometry, and all of it first, and then you thought of going to the intermediate ones and then the advanced ones? Or you were just doing number properties, completing all number properties first? So if you are not following this approach, select a no. Okay, if you're not following this approach, select a no. If you were following this approach earlier, select a yes. I'll just wait for a few more responses to come. Okay, interesting results. All right. Okay, so let me end the poll now. So I see that 60% of you were not following this approach, right? And only 40%, approximately 40% of you were following this. So I believe that now you have gotten a good understanding of why this is important. And trust me, guys, this is eye opener for me as well. I thought that I'll get a 50-50 kind of a split. I thought that this is a lot more logical than verbal, because I feel that people in verbal tend to do SCCR and RC simultaneously, not one thing at a time. But this is an eye opener for me as well. 60% of you are not doing this. Please start doing this, because trust me, if you don't do it, you're gonna struggle in quant. You might as well be looking at some weaknesses. You might as well see that, okay, in prime numbers you are not good, but you may not understand that the problem is not really prime numbers. The problem is actually exponents or something other in algebra. So it's very important that you follow the right sequence of studying. So Vikas is an interesting question. How do I find the right resources for it? So Vikas, I'm going to talk about that. Ashima is saying, what should I include in all three levels? So Ashima, I'm going to help you understand. And that's a common question which people ask me. So don't worry, I have it prepared. So I'll help you understand what are the basic topics, intermediate and advanced topics. And I won't bore you by giving you a list of topics. I'll help you understand how to find it out yourself. Okay. So let's quickly move to the sequence of studying for people who have already prepared. So till now I talked about people who are starting their prep. Okay. For quant, this is the order that you should follow. For verbal, you should do SC followed by CR followed by RC. But what about people who have already prepared? For example, Abhinav was asking a question around that. Okay, so what about Abhinav? What should he do, or someone who is in a similar situation do? Okay, so what if you have already prepared? In that case, what you should do is you should take up a module-wise test. What is a module? Module is SC, CR, or RC. Module is number properties, algebra, and so on. So you take up module-wise test and classify the modules into two brackets. Anything where you get more than 70 percentile kind of a score, it's a strong area. Anything that you have less than 70 percentile score is your weak area. Okay, so first do that. And I'm going to take the example of verbal to make it easy for you. So let's assume that you took this test and this were the scores that you got. You got an 90 percentile in SC, 60 in CR, and 40 in RC. So clearly these two are in your weak area. Okay, these are your weak areas, and this SC is your strong area. Okay, so that's how you divide it. I think this is very much clear. Now obviously you need to first work on your weak areas. So the right order for this person should be CR first, RC next, and then SC in the end. Okay, that's the right order. You start on your weak areas first, and then you move to your strong areas. Now, can you tell me in the chat here why I have written CR first and RC later, even though the score in RC is slightly lower than CR? Can anyone tell me that in the chat here? Quickly, I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to wait for some responses for around 30 seconds. So let's see. Let's tell me why have I written CR first and RC later, even when your accuracy in CR is slightly better? Okay, so interesting. Let me see what you guys have written. So, as Vikas says, since SC is already strong, so SC is clear, Vikas. That's why SC is coming next. But what about CR and RC? Atul says moral booster. Ram Kumar says because of sequence. Good. Surya says RC is hard. Yes. So think of it this way. Yes, Gaurav is bang on target as per the order SC, CR, and RC, and that's the easiest way to look at it. Okay. So think of it like this: that in your individual areas, okay, first you have to classify in the two groups, okay, strong group and the weak group. In any group, for example, in the weak group, you should try to stick to this order: SC followed by CR followed by RC. So in this case, for this student, CR and RC are in this group. So that's why he should follow this order. And the reason is very simple. There is a certain skill in CR which helps you in RC as well. So if you start working on RC directly and your skill that is tested in CR is weak, it will actually hamper you. Okay, so that's why this performance, this sequence is very, very critical. All right, so let me ask a quick question, poll rather. Are you guys clear with this sequence? For those of you, I'm talking about those of you who have already prepared for some time now. Are you guys clear about the sequence, how to do it for yourself? The same thing you can do for quant also. That's not a problem. Okay, cool. So really happy to see everyone is clear. That's great. So let's move to the next part. So till now what we have done, we have kind of understood how to go about identifying your target score, how to go about sequencing the right things for quant and for verbal. That's something we have understood. Now, once you have understood all of this, now you are in a position to create a study plan. Okay. How should you create the study plan? The study plan should be having clear targets and deadlines. So there are multiple factors that you have to consider. Your prep time can be anywhere between 100 to 350 hours. The things that you have to consider is your strengths and weaknesses. For example, if you're strong in a particular area, let's say you're strong in quant or you are strong in verbal, it depends on that. So if you're strong in an area, you'll probably need more time, less time for that. For a weaker area, you'll probably need more time. You also need to take into account the time available with you every week, because if you kind of create a plan which is just a plan, it tells you that okay, you have to do all this and it doesn't have a deadline for every week, you'll fall off track. And if you kind of commit, let's say 40 hours in a week, and you are not able to put in that much effort, you will plan will still fall off track. So it's very important to think about the time which is available with you every week. Then you need to uh, have the right sequence of learning. So you need to jot down all the things that you have to learn in the right order, maybe in a piece of paper. Understand how much you have to work on the content for each area. I assign times to it, timestamps to it, and then based on your time available, you will divide those things into the right category. Okay. So quickly, another question from you guys. How many of you are thinking right now, how do I go about doing all this myself? How many of you are thinking about this right now? It's so complicated, right? I have to do so many things, sequence of learning, content to study, time available. How do I go about doing all this by myself? How many of you are thinking about this? Quick yes, no, guys. Gaurav is asking, are these, so I'm taking some questions on the Q&A, but the chat pod. Gaurav is asking, are these time tests? Yes, Gaurav. So if you're someone who has already prepared, ideally you should take this as time test. Maybe take a little bit, relax it to 2.5 minutes, maybe, or 3 minutes, but take time test. That's okay. Okay, cool. So I see that almost 87% of you are thinking, how do I do it? I don't know how to do it. Okay, 12% of you are clear, and that's a good thing. I'm happy to know that you're clear about it. But in case you're not clear how to go about it, don't worry. We have a solution for you, and that's one of the biggest problems that I said people have. They don't know how to go about planning the studies in the right way, and that's where GMAT comes into picture. So even if you are a free trial user, we kind of create a study plan for you with clear target and deadlines, considering all the factors that I talked about. So I'm going to show you that study plan live right now. So when you log into your portal, you can just go to the calendar view, and you can see that there are clear milestones around each of the goals that you have to do. All this is personalized. And the best part is this is not a static plan. What I mean to say is it's not a templatized thing that you're seeing. You can actually learn from these plan itself. All you need to do is click on the relevant element, and you can just click on start learning and start right then and there. You don't need to worry about referring to another material and opening the plan somewhere else. The plan is all in one place, and it is planned for the entire duration of your studies till the end. Okay. And the best thing is, if you don't want to look at it this view, you can actually go to the task view list, where you can actually see every week task list based on the time that you are supposed to input. So you can see that we are telling you to do prime numbers as a topic in this current week, and all the activities are listed down. For triangles, all the activities are listed down. All you need to do is click on the start button. The moment you click on the start button, you will be taken inside the course. You can just start learning. It will be told to you that okay, which are the quizzes that you should take, which are the videos that you should take up. Everything is there in front of you. You don't need to think about what am I supposed to do on which day. You don't need to worry about it at all. Everything is clear to you. All the task is taken care of by the portal. And the plan is not static, it is an adaptive plan. Every week when you log in, it will tell you how much of the plan you completed last week. You can tell it how much time you have in the current week, because as working professionals you may have more time and less time in a different week. So we tell you exactly how much you need to do based on the time available per week. So at the moment you mention the time that you have that week, the plan which will be created will be adaptive accordingly. So let's say I have 31 to 40 hours in the next week, and I click on update, it will actually change the plan. Okay, so that's a feature which is there on GMAT Viz, and actually you can go to our website. Even a free trial user can get an entire plan created. Even if you don't have access to the entire content, you can actually see in what order you should go and do it. So just to give you an idea, if you click on this tab, course tab, you will be able to see the entire view of in everything. So over here you are seeing the milestones in the course tab. And please bear this in mind, this is there in the course tab. If you click on the course tab, you'll be able to expand and see the right order for quant, what are the various topics that are supposed to be taken care of. For example, let's say if you want to understand what are the topics in quant foundation, so you are saying over here quant foundations is a particular level, all the topics under quant foundation will be listed in the course tab. So you can go to the course tab and actually open it and see it for yourself. So that kind of information is there. Even for a free trial user, you won't be able to access it, but you can actually see the sequence. Okay, so with that, I'm completing the planning phase of our discussion. So remember, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So it is very, very important for you to make sure that you plan your studies properly. The planning part is the most critical, and you can register on our free trial using going to our website. I've just mentioned the link in the chat. You can actually do that if you want to, or just bookmark this and do it later on the webinar. So I'll quickly take a few questions which are there in the poll, if there are any. So Karan says, confused sometimes the section where I score good, I leave for some time, when I go back, it's impacted. So Karan, the good, that's one of the important things, and I want to cover it as well. So ideally, when you are moving from one section to another, you should actually continue working on the previous section. Maybe devote 10-15% of your time every week on that. Neelam is asking, how can I create this calendar? I missed the information on this calendar. So Neelam, to create this calendar, all you need to do is just go to our website, create a free trial account, and you will get limited access to our course. If you take the page, you will get the entire access. So this plan is going to be adaptive and work for you every single week. Okay, let's take the next question. I have taken a test on it, and the best part of the test is it can pause button where you can just pick up the test from where we left. Good, Ashima, I'm happy to know that you liked it. That's a good point. So good, I have taken all the questions. So let us move to the next stage now. Okay, so now we are going to move to the execution stage. So now that we have planned the prep, now we have understood that, okay, how do I go about planning? How do I create a study plan, and how do I make sure that what's the right order in which you should learn? It comes to execution. Now, in order to understand how to execute, it's important for us to understand how the GMAT algorithm works. And this part of the webinar is going to be a little bit common with what I discussed in the last webinar. If some of you attended that webinar last week, you would have heard this already. But let me quickly run through this because a lot of you may not have taken that webinar earlier. Okay, so how the GMAT algorithm works is everyone starts at a medium difficulty level. And as you get a question right, the difficulty level of the next few questions go up. And as you get a question wrong, the difficulty level goes down also. So for example, if user 1, for example, gets this 3 questions right out of 5, his accuracy is 60% and his score is 12 points. How do I know that? I just added these 3 data points because these are the 3 questions that he got right. Similarly, on the other hand, if I take another student who also starts at the medium level, but he gets the first question wrong and his difficulty level drops, and then after that he gets question right. In this case also, his score accuracy is 60%, but his score is just 6 points because he got a medium, medium, and easy question right. Okay, so his score is just 6 points over here. Okay, what I wanted to illustrate was that on GMAT, accuracy doesn't matter as much. Okay, it matters, but it's not the only thing that matters. 2 people with same accuracies can have a very, very different result. And let me show you with a proper ESR report. So if you look at these 2 ESR reports, these are for the verbal section. Okay, now on the left side, you see a person who made 8 mistakes in verbal, and his score in verbal is 30. Okay, On the right, I'm showing you another person's CSR. This person has made 7 mistakes. So if you see the difference, this is just one extra mistake that the person on the left has made. Okay, but you will be shocked to see the score of this student. This student has scored a 41 on verbal. And if you look at the percentile wise scores, there is a difference of 35 percentile between these two students. What I'm talking about here is I'm talking about the difference between getting us, let's say, 660 versus, let's say, a 730 on GMAT. Okay, this verbal score can actually create a difference of 60 to 70 points in your overall score. That is the difference that this can create. And if you see, there is just one extra mistake that the student has made on the left side. And why does this happen? This happens simply because how the algorithm works. Since the algorithm adapts the difficulty level of the questions based on your accuracy, if you look at the first student, he made 4 mistakes in the first quarter itself. And he probably made these mistakes towards the beginning of the test. And the second student only made 2 mistakes. Okay. And if you look at this over here, you'll see that since the first student made 4 mistakes, his difficulty level did not increase from the first quarter to the second quarter. On the other hand, if you look at the student on the right side, his difficulty level went up substantially from the first quarter to the second quarter. And see it like this. In the second quarter, even though the student 1 has a good accuracy, he still was getting only easy medium questions. And on the second quarter, the student 2 was getting medium high questions. Okay, so that's what the impact of the first quarter was. And if you see, the difference in the difficulty level of the questions that they got right was significant. And in fact, even in the third quarter, if you see, the student was getting much higher difficulty level of questions. Okay, and that's one of the biggest reasons why he ended up with a 41 and the other one ended up with a 30. Okay, so what do you understand from this? Can you tell me in the chat here? What do you guys understand from it? Can you tell me in the chat here? I would like to see what did you guys get out of it. Generally, I spend around 10 minutes on this part, but since I kind of covered it in the last webinar and a good number of you might have attended it, I just quickly went through it. So just want to make sure, what did you guys understand from this part, from this analysis? Okay, Priyanka says first section is important. Answering initial questions is crucial. We need ability, not accuracy. Good point, Ashima. Very good point. In fact, that's the main crux I'm talking about. Okay, try to solve more difficult questions. Good point, Atul. You need to get difficult questions right. But is that the same as trying to solve more difficult questions? That's something we'll talk about also. Karan says initial mistakes backfire. Okay. First 10 questions are important. Try to avoid mistakes in first half. That's good. All of your, see, Gaurav, Kaushal, Karan, you're talking about the right things. But what you need to understand is, what I'm trying to say here is, it's not about accuracy, guys. It's more about your skill. It's more about your ability. It's about which questions do you get right. Do you have the skill of getting questions from any difficulty level correct? That's something which is important. Because the reason I'm saying this is, I come across this question a lot of times. People tell me all the time that, okay, I am solving the OG. When I'm solving the OG, I kind of get 80%, 90% questions correct. But when I go to take a mock, my scores decrease significantly. Okay. How many of you have been in a similar situation? Quick yes, no? How many of you have been in a similar situation? That when you solve the OG, you get a very high accuracy. But when you take a mock test, the scores are not that great. How many of you have been in that situation? Okay. Okay. Cool. So I see almost everyone has been in that situation. Yeah. So it's a very common thing to happen. But what you fail to understand here is, in OG, honestly speaking, there are not many hard questions. There are not many 700 level questions. And when you're looking at just accuracy, you're just looking at accuracy as a number. You're not looking at your accuracy across difficulty levels. And that's what's more critical on GMAT. The skill is basically the ability to get a question of any difficulty level correct. And let me break it down further for you. Okay. So if you are actually at a score of less than 550, what does it mean? It basically means that when it comes to easy questions, you get most of them right. You may be getting around 60 to 70% of them right. So easy questions is you're getting most of them right. But when it comes to medium questions, you're only getting 30% of them right, up to 30% or 40%. So the moment the algorithm serves you medium difficulty questions, everything goes for a toss. And that's why you don't even get to see any hard questions altogether. What does it signify? What it signifies is, since easy questions mostly test you directly your conceptual knowledge, they're just direct application of concepts, not any convoluted application at all. So what it tells is that you are also struggling with conceptual knowledge. So if you're at less than 550 level, you need to also work on your conceptual skills. But I'm sure most of the people who are there in this session are going to be in this level, around this level, I would say, around the 650 mark. So what does it signify? Signifies that when it comes to easy questions, you're getting a very high accuracy. When I say very high, I mean maybe 80 to 90%. You're getting almost everything right. Okay. When it comes to medium questions, you're getting most of them right. You're getting around 60%, around 60 to 70% of them right. Again, 70, 60 or 70 or 50, it depends on which side of 600 you are and how close to 650 you are. But when it comes to tough questions, your accuracy staggers around that 30% mark. So what happens is, the moment the algorithm starts serving you a hard question, you get them wrong. And that's when the algorithm stops serving you a hard question. So even with a decent accuracy, you still end up with a 650 kind of a score. Now, what do you understand from this? What basically why this happens is, why are you struggling with medium and hard questions and not struggling with easy questions is what you need to understand. A lot of people come to me and tell me that I struggle because I end up with too close choices. But what they fail to realize is, why are they struggling with too close choices? Okay. When I was a student, I also faced this problem. I also felt that, okay, I'm struggling with too close choices. I always get to the last two choices, but I'm not able to answer the right one. Okay, it's all about luck, or I need to just solve more questions. That's what I used to feel. But trust me, guys, it's not about the right, it's not about luck, or it's not about the last two. It's more about the right application. You need to focus on the right strategy to solve questions. If you focus on the right strategy and if you learn the right method to solve questions, trust me, you will never get stuck with too close choices in the end. You will always get to the right answer. Okay, and that's what a 700 plus kind of a that's what you need for a 700 plus kind of a score. And I'm going to talk about the right approach. Don't worry about that also. So for a 700 plus score, you need to have a very high accuracy in both easy and medium questions. What I mean by very high is around 90 to 95% accuracy in both these question types. Okay, you should not be getting anything wrong here as far as possible. And when it comes to hard questions, you need to still have a good accuracy here. When I say good, I mean around 60 to 70% on the bare minimum. Just to cross a 700, you need to have at least a 60% accuracy. If you are targeting a 750 kind of a score, you might need to boost it up to maybe a 85% also. Okay, that again depends on how high 700s are you looking at. For the low 700s, even 60% will do. For a high 700, you need to have a 85% or more accuracy in the 700 level questions. Now, how do you get that? So the approach is very simple. In simple terms, if I have to summarize, the approach is simple. First thing you need to do is make the algorithm serve you hard questions. How do you do that? By making sure that you get the easy and medium ones correct. Once you get the hard questions, the second thing that you need to do to get a good score is you need to get the hard questions right. How do you get the hard questions right? You get the hard questions right by focusing on the right skills and how to apply them. And now let's talk about the execution stage. Now that we understand what is required for scoring a 700 plus, now let's understand what you should do in the execution stage. So skill basically is consisting of two parts. One is your conceptual understanding and the second is your application. Okay. Now let me ask you this question. How many of you, when you actually when you prepare a particular topic, first learn the concepts and then just move to practicing questions? How many of you do that? Quick yes, no here. When you're taking a topic, for example, let's say you're taking prime numbers. What you do is you just learn the concepts of prime numbers, all the formulas that are suggested, all the rules that are there, and then you move to solving questions, maybe from the OG or GMAT club. How many of you do that? Quick yes, no, and please be very honest with me. How many of you do that? I know some of you might find this question a little awkward also, But how many of you do that? Just learn, first thing is learn the concepts, take a book or maybe a course that you're using. You just learn the concepts and then you just move to practicing questions. Tons of questions. I'll just wait for a few more responses, guys, and I will request all of you to please participate in this poll. Think about it and tell me. Okay. No more responses, guys? Okay, cool. So almost 1/4 of you, almost 3/4 of you do that, right? And if you're doing that, you're basically focusing on the concept, but you're not really focusing on application that much. And let me make it simple for you. Let me help you understand what I mean by this. I'm happy to see that at least 26% of you are doing it, not doing it, sorry. So what are the learning stages for each topic? So for example, if you're learning prime numbers, what are the steps that you should follow? There are basically 3 important steps. The first step, the first stage is very simple. You have to learn the concept for sure. You need to know all the formulas. You need to know all the rules. You need to know all of that. That's very, very critical. That's the first step to do. But what about the second step? The second step is not about practicing questions. The second step then is you need to master a methodical approach. You need to learn, how do I apply these concepts on a GMAT style question? What are the various ways to do it? Let's say there are, for example, in prime numbers, there are 10 different ways in which GMAT can test you on. You need to know exactly how you should go about solving all those 10 type of questions. Okay, and there has to be a consistent methodology to do that. For example, in SC, if I take verbal example, if you learn modifiers, that's the concept. You learn all the rules, grammar rules that exist. But how do you apply those grammar rules on a sentence? You can't just look at a sentence and say that, okay, this is the modifier, let me recall all the rules around it and apply it. It's not possible, humanly possible in 2 minutes to do it. In most cases, you will miss it. So second thing that you need to do is you need to learn a methodical approach. And I'll talk about the methodical approach. Once you have learned a methodical approach, now, how do you learn a methodical approach is something, I'll just talk about it a little bit. To learn a methodical approach, what you need to do is you need to take one question at a time, solve it, and then look at a solution which is using a methodical approach. So when you do that, what you're doing is you're actually tallying your approach against the best method. Okay, when you do that, you're able to understand what is the difference between how you're approaching it and how you should be approaching it in reality. When you're able to do this, you will be able to learn the right method. That's the approach. So you do this for question 1. You do question 1, review the solution, make sure that your method is correct. So at this moment, your idea is not to get the question 1 right place. When you learn from this question, you then move to question 2. You see, you apply the learning from that question 1 to question 2 and still tally the solution, tally your approach with the solution. See whether you are able to perfect it. Were you able to come closer to the approach? Learn from that and then do this for question 3 and so on. So that's what you should be doing in stage 2. Take one question at a time. And for that, you also need to have a solution which is giving you the best possible method. Only after doing this, you should go to stage 3, which is practicing questions on the topic. So once you're done with all this, maybe take up a question of 5 quiz of 5 questions, and then solve them back to back, apply your learnings and test how you have done. And this is the key thing to get to a 700 plus kind of a score. Okay. Having said that, as most of you said, people don't do this 3 stages. What they do is they jump from stage 1 to stage 3. Right after learning the concepts, they move to practicing questions. And that's why I struggle. What happens in this case is you end up repeating the same mistakes in those questions because you don't know how to solve them in the right order. If you're by default naturally good at it, so for example, some people have a flair for quant, you kind of improve. If you're naturally good at it, you improve. But if you're not good at it, you kind of repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And it takes you ages to get to a target, the right score. Or you get stuck in that score range of 600 to 650. That's the biggest reason why people get stuck. Okay. So what do I mean by right skills? What do I mean the right approach? So for example, if I have to solve these 2 equations, can you guys tell me how will you solve this set of these 2 equations quickly? How will you solve for x and y using using these two equations? Okay. Uh, in the meantime, other people answer. Shruti has an interesting point. She says, this may take a lot of time to finish all concepts. Yes, Shruti, it might take a lot of time, but what you need to understand is it will take you to your target score in the least possible time. See, if you think about it like this, think of it like this, there are three phases of learning that I talked about: learning, fine tuning, and mock phase. Okay? If you don't focus on the right methodology, you will actually be spending a lot more time in these two phases and it won't be effective at all. Okay, you'll probably be in a loop again and again, again and again, again and again. But if you do it the right way, the way I am suggesting, you'll be spending most of your time in the learning phase, a little lesser in the fine tuning phase, and almost no time, almost 3 to 5 mocks should be good enough in the mock phase, and you will get to your target score much faster. What people focus on is the time for learning. They try to do away with all the concepts as soon as possible. But what you need to understand is this is the most important phase. If you do it right, it's gonna be much more effective. It's gonna be much more easier for you to get to the target score. I hope, Srushti, it's clear to you now. Okay, so let me thank you, Srushti. I'm happy that it's clear to you. Great. So let me see the responses. So most of you are talking about the right method. Most of you are saying that you should equate the coefficient of x, basically maybe multiply the second equation by 2. Then step 2 is eliminate x, get the value of y, and substitute the value of y to get x. And this is a methodical approach. So when you learn about linear equations, you're supposed to learn this method to solve these linear equations. Okay. Now, this is something which is very simple. A lot of you do it naturally, right? But what you need to understand is when you were in school, when you were learning this method for the first time, okay, it was very, very difficult for you to learn this. Your teachers told you in multiple times, you practiced it over a lot of years, and only then you perfected it. Okay, you learned a methodical approach. It was not same as concepts. It was a different thing. And that's what you need to do for verbal as well. A lot of you who are struggling with verbal, don't do this for verbal. You don't follow a strategic approach, and that's what's the most common problem that I see. Let me talk about a part of verbal. I'm going to talk about reading comprehension because this is something which is misunderstood by a lot of people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about three common approaches, the most popular approaches that people follow, and I'm going to ask you which one of this do you follow, and I'll tell you what is the problem with that approach. Okay, so let me quickly tell you the approaches. What is the first approach? The first approach says that in RC, you have a long passage to read, and obviously you don't have enough time. So what you do is you read the first line and the last line of every paragraph, and then just go to the questions. By reading the first line and the last line, you will get a gist of what is there in each paragraph. When you go to the questions, you know what the question is asking, then you can come back to the relevant paragraphs and answer the question. That's approach number one. Approach number two is you read the passage quickly in 2 minutes. Read through it as quickly as possible. Do it in 2 minutes. Take a mental note of what lies where. What is the information where it is lying, and then refer back to the passage for every single question that exists. Okay, that's approach number two. Approach number three: read the question first so you know what you are looking for, and then go to the relevant part and read it. Okay, tell me which of the three approaches do you follow quickly. You have a poll, so you can write in the poll. So in the meantime, you guys respond to the poll. I will take a question from Ashima. Ashima is saying, whenever I solve a question, I don't have confidence whether it's right or not. How can I improve that? So Ashima, that's what I'm talking about right now. And I have been there. It's very painful. I have been there, trust me. I'll talk about that. I got a verbal 41 on GMAT. Okay, it's a 93 percentile. Okay, this was my score on GMAT. When I started my prep, I was at the first test that I took, I was at a 13 percentile. Okay, so Ashima, I have been there. I understand that. I was at a situation like this earlier. I used to take the entire verbal test. Again, quant was always my strength. Verbal was my nemesis. I used to say that. And when I used to take a test, I used to always cross my fingers when I used to click on the submit button that God, please make things right for me. God, please help me get a good score on this one. Because I always saw my scores fluctuating. So I understand where your fault, what is happening, and I'm going to talk about that. Okay, so let me end this poll. So as expected, I saw that most of you follow approach 2. Almost good number of you, same similar number of you do not follow any of the above approaches. Great, good. Shiv is saying, I read the paragraphs, write summary notes on each paragraph, then go to questions. Good, Shiv. That's one of the best approaches to follow. But trust me, guys, approach 2 is very common between students, very common. And trust me, I have done all of it. All these things I have done as a student, and I've struggled big time with verbal. Okay, none of these approaches work. All these approaches have one common flaw. They focus on saving time. They are all shortcut driven. Okay, they don't focus on inferences, they don't focus on comprehension, they just focus on reading. In GMAT RC, it's not about what is written. It's trust me, it's not about what is written. It is about why is it written. You need to ask yourself the relevant questions after you read every single line. You need to ask yourself how the information is flowing. Okay, so Surya is asking, he can't hear me. Just want to make sure all of you can hear me, guys. I'm maybe asking you to take a poll, but just want to make sure that my voice is loud and clear to all of you. Okay, great, guys. Thank you so much. I see that all of you can hear me. Great. So I was saying that in GMAT RC, it's not about what is written, it's about why it is written. So when you're reading a passage, you have to focus on identifying how the information is flowing from one part to another. What is the author's take on it? Is the author positive about it, negative about it? Why is the author talking about all of it? There's a certain purpose why he's writing it. So you have to involve yourself in the passage. The first read has to be so good that you don't need to read the passage at all again. At all. For any question. Even if it means you take 4 minutes or 5 minutes to do the first read, you will only be taking 40 seconds to solve each question. And trust me, you will get the questions right because you know why the wrong answers are wrong. Okay. Think of it this way. Whenever you are marking a wrong answer, okay, you are doing two mistakes. Okay. You're doing two mistakes. Mistake number one is you are marking something, you're ignoring something which is wrong. Okay. You're ignoring something which is wrong. And mistake two that you are making is you are overlooking something which is correct. You're rejecting something which is correct. So these are two mistakes that you are making if you are marking the wrong answer on verbal. And one of the common reasons why a lot of people don't think like this is very simple. They feel that in GMAT verbal, at least, everything is a gray area. There is no right or wrong answer. There is a good and a better answer. Okay, tell me how many of you feel like that. Please be very honest with me. Do you feel like this, that in GMAT verbal it's a gray area, everything is in gray area? There is not one right answer. There are multiple right answers, maybe. It's just that one is good and one is better. How many of you feel that way? Please be very honest with me. If you feel that way, please select yes. Okay, I see a good number of responses. I'll wait for a few more to come. So I'm repeating my question. I'm saying most of us believe that in GMAT verbal, basically, everything is in a gray area. Basically, there is a good answer and there is a better answer, and we are supposed to take the better answer or the best one of them. Okay, so how many of you feel that? Yes, no, guys. All right. I see the votes have stabilized, so I'm going to end the poll. And you can see this, right? 73% of you think like this. It's like I'm sitting in your head and asking you questions. I'm able to predict what you think. And the reason I'm able to predict that is very simple. I have been through the grind. I have been in your position. This is how I also used to think. I also used to feel that, okay, There are two options that I can get to. It's just that these are close options. I tell myself that okay, I at least was able to come down to them. Okay, I did my best. It's just that one option was better, other one was not. And the reason we do it is psychology. Simple. No one wants to tell themselves that we are at fault. You need to understand on GMAT verbal there are never two correct answers, never a better answer and a good answer. There's always one right and four wrong answers. And if you are making a mistake, you are not making a mistake because you're stuck with two close choices. Don't give yourself a credit just because you are able to come down to two choices. Don't give yourself the credit. If you are getting the wrong answer, you are making two mistakes. You are ignoring the wrong answer, you are ignoring something that is wrong, and you are overlooking something that is correct. You are making two mistakes. It is GMAT verbal is giving you two chances to correct that problem. And trust me, the moment, the day you accept this fact, things will change for you. Trust me, this has happened to me. I struggled with verbal big time for 6 months. I did everything possible. Trust me, I did. I read Renan Martin. I read novels. I did fast reading. I used to every day I used to spend 45 minutes on newspapers, articles, read them like crazily, improved my reading speed. I still remember my initial prep. I memorized 2000 words for my verbal, 2000 words. And it was painful. I still remember I used to have them in my phone, in a notepad. I used to recap them every week. I've done all of it. 6 months, it was a big pain. Trust me, the moment I accepted this fact that there is always a wrong answer and a right answer, things changed for me. So none of these approaches will work. It's like trying randomly, solving questions randomly. What you need to do is you need to approach GMAT verbal like quant. You need to follow the right methods to solve questions. In SC, it is very critical that you focus on meaning-based approach. Now, most of you would be knowing meaning-based approach. But meaning-based approach doesn't just mean that you read a sentence and you get the meaning of it. That's not what it means. Meaning-based approach is about getting the exact same meaning that the author is communicating. Trust me, guys, I come across a lot of students who even have a 70% accuracy in SC, and they tell me that, okay, they are following the meaning-based approach. But when I sit with them one-on-one, I really understand that they're not doing that properly. They're doing it to an extent, but not properly. When it comes to meaning-based approach, it is very important that you break the sentence into small chunks, go to that, understand that part properly, relate it back to the meaning of the other part, and continuously evolve your understanding as you read on. That's what meaning-based approach is. And it can only be mastered if you have the right solutions using the meaning-based approach and you're looking at them after every question. Okay? And I'm going to ask you another question, guys, very quickly. How many of you, when you get a question right, you don't really care about reading the solution properly? How many of you do that? If you get a question right, you don't really care about the solution that much. You just move to the next question or just look it at a high level. How many of you do that? Quick yes, no? And I'm sorry for asking so many questions, but I'm trying to help you learn the right things. And these are all things that I've done. I've made these mistakes. I want you to improve on that. Okay. Cool. I see some responses now. Okay. So let me end the poll. So I'm happy that you guys have been honest. 71%, a whopping 71% of you do that. Don't do it, guys. Please make sure that even for the ones that you get right, you should focus on the solution. Ensure that you are using the right methods to solve and get to the right answer. You might have been lucky on that front, on that question. So for a meaning-based approach, you have to look at the solution. You have to follow it properly. You have to tally your approach. You have to make sure that the same approach is being followed by you as it is supposed to be. And trust me, guys, it's not about tons of questions that you need to solve. In my first phase, the 6 months that I struggled with, I solved tons and tons and tons and tons of questions, and the result was nothing. because I was making the same mistakes again and again. In the second phase, when I improved my approach and application, I used to solve very few questions, but I made sure that I learned from every single one of them. It's easier said than done, trust me. But once you start doing it, you will see the magic happen. So in CR, you should do pre-thinking. In RC, you should do involved and involved reading. In DS, you should focus on drawing inferences. In PS, there is a three-step process that needs to be followed. Obviously, in the webinar, I can't cover all of it. Shrushti, you were asking about difficult words and sentences and all this. All of it is very important. We will cover it as a part of this 20 webinar series that we are running. So if you haven't registered for it, please register for it and make sure you are free on every weekend till August for in this time slot, 7 p.m. IST, 1:30 p.m. GMT. Okay, we are going to cover all these things in depth in this webinars. Okay, so what is your typical learning curve? Let me quickly summarize this. The learning curve is very simple. You should first learn the concepts, and before you move to practicing questions, you should learn how to apply them. And in order to do that, this is something which is very important for us at GMAT Viz. And every single topic that you do at GMAT Viz, you follow these 3 steps. So what we do is, for teaching you the concepts, we always focus on video lessons. We have video lessons for teaching you all the concepts required for a particular topic. And right after you have the video lessons, you will move to something called a concept booster. What does a concept booster do? From our side, we have done extensive research to identify what are the various kind of questions that you can come across on GMAT from a topic. So let's say you completed prime numbers. You understood all the concepts on prime numbers. You will have a concept booster containing 10 different questions because we identified there are 10 types in which GMAT can test you on primes. You'll have 10 questions. You'll solve one question at a time in the concept booster. Right after you solve that question, it will be followed by a detailed solution. In the solution, we will tell you a step-by-step approach to solve it, along with the traps that you should avoid. Okay. Once you learn, and this is very important, it is very, very important that you look at the solution even if you get the question right. Once you do that, then you move to question 2, you apply the learning on question 2, and then you look at the solution of question 2, and you learn from it, and then you move to question 3, and so on. So in this iterative process, your skill level goes up. You're able to understand the right method by the time you end the concept booster. And once you're done with the concept booster, we'll take you to a practice quiz where you're going to apply all the learnings that you have generated till now. And then only you will move to the next topic. Okay. So guys, quickly, till now, we are going to close the execution phase now. So are you guys with me? Did you understand all of it? How you should go about your execution? Is it clear to all of you? Quick yes, no? Are you clear about the execution phase, guys? Quick yes, no here. Okay. Good. Really happy to see that all of you are clear about it. I'm so glad. It's not an easy task to teach everything about how to prepare, because I have struggled as a student to do this myself. So I'm happy that you are clear about it. So make sure you're focusing on application, and I would strongly recommend looking at GMAT Viz if you're looking at that part. Okay, so let's move to the assessing phase. So how should you assess your performance? Okay, so when you're assessing your performance, there are 2 things that you have to focus on. Okay, first thing is your assessment has to be done in 2 stages: during your learning phase, and it has to be done during your fine-tuning phase also. But what you do, how you assess yourself in the 2 phases has to be different. For example, in the learning phase, you should not be assessing yourself for timing. You should not be worrying about solving a question under 2 minutes. Okay, let me in fact ask this question: how many of you, when I was talking about the right approach, how many of you are thinking that this approach is going to be very time consuming? And please be very honest with me. And I know I ask a lot of questions, but just to make sure that you guys are with me. So how many of you are thinking about this, that this approach is very time consuming, the approach that I was talking about, maybe for RC or anything? How many of you thought of that? Okay, I've got a good number of responses. Okay, so just ending the poll now. So thank you so much for being honest. Almost 68% of you were thinking about it. And that's a common mistake that people do. When they're learning initially, they kind of focus on this part that they should get the timing right from day one. Okay. And that's something that should not do. Don't worry about timing initially. Timing improves when you learn the right method. And that's something which is to do with psychology. Whenever you're learning a new method or the right method to do something, a new skill, it's always your conscious mind that learns it first, and then only your subconscious mind comes into picture once you do it enough number of times, whether it was driving the car for the first time or swimming or whatever. It took you a lot of time to get in the zone, and once your subconscious mind takes it over, it's very, very smooth. So you have to make sure that when you are doing it, that when you're learning the right method, you are doing it the correct way. So when you're in the learning phase, just focus on learning the right method. And that's why I said, even if you get the question right, you should focus on making sure that you're tallying the solution, tallying the approach with the solution for every single question. And when you move to the fine tuning phase, then only you should focus on timing. Okay. So this is what I would mean to say. So don't time yourself in the learning phase, because if you start worrying about timing too soon, your focus will shift away from learning and your score will stagnate later on. In the fine tuning phase, you will spend more time, you will waste more time. Okay. So when you when you are going through individual topics, you should make sure that you are mastering it before moving on. And when I say mastering it, I don't mean timing perspective, I mean from the perspective of methodology. So what you should do is, let's say you completed prime numbers, so you should take a topic wise quiz in that. So take a topic quiz, the practice quiz, for example, prime numbers. You take, you find out your strengths. If you are strong in it, well and good, you move ahead. But if you are weak in it, you should then right away focus on the weak areas. You should right away focus on the conceptual gaps, the application gaps, and work on it. Because if you don't do that and you move to some other topic, then your gaps in prime numbers is going to hurt you in that topic as well. It's not going to be a fruitful exercise for you at all. Okay. So without identifying the gaps, if you continue moving ahead, that's going to create a lot of issues for you. Now, a lot of people don't know how to do it, because once they take a quiz, it's very difficult for them themselves to analyze why they're weak in that. It's not easy. As a student, it was not easy for me. And if you don't have the tools to do it, your issues will pile up and it will hurt you later on. Now, the good thing about GMAT Wiz is, as I said, it serves you a AI-driven study plan, but it doesn't just stop there. The entire course is driven by AI, and it's a dynamic course. It is not a static course. It changes in real time. None of the other courses in the world has the capability of doing that. This course changes in real time. Let me show you an example. So if you see on this side, this is a topic that we have in free trial. In fact, you can also go through it if you want to. We are teaching you in 3 steps. First is the video lesson, then is the concept booster, and then you have the practice quiz in the end. The 3 steps that I talked about. Now, when you take the practice quiz, you click on this quiz and you take this quiz. Once you're done with this quiz, you just have to solve this quiz. By the way, we have a whiteboard as well here. When you solve this quiz, the platform will assess your performance automatically. The AI will run, it will look at all the errors that you have made, it will analyze your performance, identify the core problems, identify additional videos or lessons that you should go through, and serve all of it to you on the platter. So you can see there are certain videos that are created. There is a quiz also that is created for you. You can simply click on the yes button and accept this personalization. Once you accept this personalization, this will get added to your course directly. Okay, so let me show you that again. So if you remember, it was ending at a practice quiz earlier, but now you can see there are some additional short videos which are created for you. There is an additional quiz which is there of 30 odd minutes that you can practice. Okay, you can see there is a video, there are videos, there are quizzes. All of this is personalized for you. Okay, none of this is like static. All of this is done in real time based on your strengths and your weaknesses. And that's the beauty of this tool. So if you take the GMAT course, it will personalize your learning. It will help you to assess in the right way. Okay. So remember, assessment has to be done in 2 stages. Learning phase, you should not worry about timing. You should just focus on the right methodology. Make sure you are getting questions right for the right reasons. And when you move to the fine tuning phase, you talk about timing. So how should you do the fine tuning phase basically, or the optimizing stage? So when you're done with all the topics, okay, so what you should do is you should take up a module-wise test. Maybe take up 1 or 2 quizzes of 15 to 30 questions. For example, you can take up a quiz on SC after you're done with SC. Once you have done that, identify areas with less than 60% score. So for example, in SC, you identified that, okay, modifiers is an area where your score is less than 60%. And parallelism is another area. Okay, so what you do is you should focus on now improving these two areas. You should work on these two areas first. How do you improve on these areas? Let's talk about that. So first thing that you should do is you should revise some concepts. Okay, so go back to the course, go back to the learning phase of modifiers and parallelism and redo the videos. Okay, redo the videos, redo the questions in the concept booster and the solution. Okay, what is important is you should also focus on learning the application. Make sure that you look at the solutions and make sure you just don't see that you are getting it right or wrong. You're looking at the exact step-by-step method that was followed to come to the answer. Once you do that, then only you'll be able to cover your gaps. And remember, quality is more important than quantity over here. Okay, so that's what you're supposed to do. So now when you work, you have to do this, you have to optimize this for every single weak area that exists, whether it is modifiers or parallelism or anything else. So once you optimize your weak areas, then you should take up more sectional tests, okay, to ensure that you have actually improved on it. And then only you should move to the mock test phase. And as I was saying, if you do it properly, you will be actually working on the right thought process. And at this stage, when you're in the mock test phase, you will learn the right test taking strategy by understanding the algorithm. That should be the goal of the mock test phase, nothing else. That is something which is very, very crucial. And a lot of people don't really understand this part. So you should work on optimizing. Optimizing is a thing which happens multiple times. But when you're optimizing, it is very crucial for you to ensure that you are optimizing it the right way. And let me go back to the slide earlier that I showed. So for optimizing, it is very important that you're focusing on the learning the application, revising the concepts, and doing it properly. Because if you don't do that, you will continue struggling till the end. Okay, so that's something which is very critical. And once you do this, you are able to take the mock test, and that is good to go. Okay, so this is the right approach that you should follow. And in GMAT-Viz, if you take up the course, you get a mentor assigned to you, and the mentor becomes a lot more important during your optimizing phase, because the mentor is able to track your performance and tell you exactly when you're ready for the mocks, exactly what are the things that you're doing right and wrong. So all this is provided through the mentorship program. So with that, I come to the end of this webinar. So you guys can, I'm opening this for an open-ended Q&A. So if you have any questions around your prep, anything, you can now ask me. If you want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me on piyush@gmatviz.com. And in fact, I'm going to share you the